I'm not the kind of man who gets emotional easily. But that night, something broke inside me, quietly, without anyone noticing. Emily loved to dance. When we first started dating, I remember standing for hours, just watching her sway to the music by the beach, her hair catching the breeze, that smile tilted under the moonlight. I thought to myself, if I ever proposed, I'd want that moment to return. With a ring, with music, with the words I had kept inside for too long, and I did prepare. The ring was in my pocket. I'd arranged with the band to play her favorite song. I had even memorized the speech. That night was supposed to be the moment I got down on one knee, but as I stood out on the balcony alone, quietly rehearsing words of love, she was inside, dancing with the man who once shattered her heart. And the way she looked at him, it was as if I had never existed. If you've ever given everything, only to receive a look that made you feel invisible, this story is for you. She wasn't perfect, but there was something about the way she existed in the world, unfiltered, free, a little chaotic, that made me feel grounded. Emily had this light in her, like the kind of person who walks into a room and suddenly the air shifts. She wasn't loud, but she didn't need to be. People noticed her. I noticed her. Our first real conversation wasn't even romantic. We sat on the floor of a friend's kitchen at some party in San Diego, sharing a bottle of cheap wine, laughing about bad tattoos and worse decisions. She made fun of my taste in music. I told her I hated dancing, and she made me dance anyway. That night I drove her home. She leaned her head against the window, humming some Fleetwood Mac song. It was quiet, effortless, the kind of quiet that stays with you. I don't remember when I fell in love with her. Maybe it was that night. Maybe it was long before I ever admitted it. But from the start, something about her pulled me in. We were good together. Not perfect, no one is, but there was a rhythm to us, like two people who didn't need to fill silence with noise. I got used to her routines, the way she left coffee cups half-finished, how she always sang along to songs she barely knew the lyrics to. Sunday mornings, she'd read me random headlines from her phone while I cooked eggs we'd both forget to eat until they were cold. It wasn't fireworks every day. It was better. It was peace. Her past? I knew there was someone before me. A guy named Derek. The name came up once or twice quietly. She said it ended badly. Something about lies and timing. She looked down when she said it, like the memory still scraped against her ribs. I didn't press. We all have history, and she said it was done, so I believed her, because when she looked at me, it felt like I was the only one in the room. And maybe I needed to believe that. Maybe we both did. I started picturing a future with her, not in the abstract way people say someday, but in real, grounded details. A house outside the city, not too big, a porch swing, maybe a dog, her slippers next to mine by the door. The kind of quiet life that didn't need grand gestures, just small, repeated kindness. She wasn't always easy to read. Some days she'd go quiet for no reason. Other days she'd talk for hours about childhood memories, books she never finished, dreams she was scared to chase. I listened, not because I had to, but because I wanted to understand the map of her mind. And when she smiled at me, really smiled, I felt like I'd found something rare, something I didn't want to lose. So I started saving for a ring. Nothing flashy, just simple, timeless, like her. I remember thinking, if I do this right, maybe I'll never have to start over again. And for a while, I thought I was right. I'm not a man who rushes into things. But with Emily, it didn't feel like rushing. It felt like arriving. I made a quiet promise to myself one morning, watching her sleep. I told myself that when the time was right, I'd ask her to marry me. No hesitation, no second guessing. That promise carried me through the long work days, the bills, the tough conversations about her fear of commitment, about how she'd been hurt before. I thought I could hold space for all of it, for all of her. She said she was learning to trust again, and I believed her. I wasn't trying to fix her. I just wanted to be the man who didn't add to her damage. So I planned it, slowly, carefully. I spoke to her parents. I chose a date, booked a weekend in Napa, wine, music, her favorite season. Autumn. She once said fall made her feel safe. I wanted her to feel safe with me. I thought love was enough, but love isn't always what saves us. Napa was golden that weekend. The kind of California glow you only get in late October. Cool air, warm light, soft music floating between vineyards and laughter. We arrived at the engagement party just before sunset. It was for her best friend, someone I barely knew, but Emily loved like a sister. Everyone was dressed up, glasses full, smiles easy. Emily wore a deep green dress, her hair curled just enough to look accidental. She looked unreal, like something from a photograph you'd keep in your wallet long after the colors fade. I touched the ring in my pocket. I had told the band to play her favorite song near the end of the night. I'd memorized what I was going to say. Simple, honest, nothing overdone. Just us. She leaned in, kissed my cheek, whispered, "Tonight's going to be magic." And for a moment, I believed her. I really did. The party moved like a slow wave, clinking glasses, small talk, stories half heard over music. I stayed close to Emily at first, my hand resting lightly on her back. She introduced me to people, smiled, laughed. She seemed happy. But then the music changed. A faster rhythm, familiar, something she used to dance to in the kitchen on lazy mornings. Her eyes lit up. "I love this one," she said, already stepping away. I watched her disappear into the crowd toward the dance floor. That wasn't strange. She always danced. It was part of her. I loved that about her. But what I didn't expect was who stepped out to meet her. A tall man, dark suit, confident grin. At first I didn't recognize him, but then I saw the way Emily's expression changed. Not surprised, not hesitant, soft, open, too open, and in my chest, something, instinct, memory, fear, clenched, hard. Because I knew that face. That was Derek. Derek. The name I'd heard only twice. Once when I asked, casually, the way you ask about someone's past, not looking for pain, just trying to understand. And once when she said quietly, "It ended badly. I don't really talk about him." I hadn't asked again. I didn't need to, because she told me it was over. Said it with the kind of finality that makes you believe her. And I wanted to believe her. God, I needed to. But now, here he was. And the way she smiled at him, not startled, not guarded, made something cold slip into the base of my spine. I watched them dance. At first it was nothing, just movement, music, a party. But then, her hand lingered on his shoulder. His mouth leaned in close. She laughed. That soft laugh I thought was mine. And in that moment, I realized I was staring at a woman I thought I knew, becoming someone I didn't recognize. I told myself to breathe. People dance. It's just a song. Just a moment. I gripped my glass a little tighter, took a slow sip of wine that suddenly tasted like nothing. My eyes followed them, trying not to, but drawn in like a man watching a fire creep toward his home. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe it only looked intimate because I was standing still, and they were moving. Maybe the laughter wasn't private, just polite. Maybe the way she touched his chest wasn't tenderness, just habit. But I know Emily. I know the way her fingers curl when she's flirting. I know that little head tilt when she wants someone to lean in closer. I've felt it. I've lived it. And I saw it all now. Except it wasn't for me. It was for him. The man she once said broke her heart. And the way she looked at him, it wasn't hate. It wasn't distance. It was familiarity. Too much of it. There's a look people give when they think no one's watching. That half second of honesty they don't mean to show. And I caught it. Emily turned toward Derek as the music slowed. Her hand slid down his arm and she looked up at him with this softness, the kind that's earned, not given. It stopped me cold. Because I'd seen that look before. She gave it to me once, the night we first said I love you. The morning I made her pancakes and she stood barefoot in my shirt, smiling like we were the only two people left in the world. But now, it was his. That look didn't belong to me anymore, and maybe it never did. I felt something tighten in my throat, not anger, not jealousy, loss, not of her body. She was still right there in the same room, but of her heart, of everything I thought we'd built. And in that moment I realized I couldn't propose to someone who was already dancing her way back to the past. I stepped away, no scene, no words, just a quiet retreat, through the garden lights, past the sound of glasses clinking and laughter that suddenly felt far away. I found the balcony. It overlooked the vineyard, rows of vines stretching into the dusk like lines from a story I no longer understood. The music was still playing inside. Her laughter, faint but unmistakable, drifted out like smoke under the door. I reached into my pocket and felt the box, small, solid, final. I pulled it out, opened it, stared at the ring in my palm. It was simple. A solitaire. No diamonds on the band, no showy spark. Just clean, honest, and sure, the way I imagined love should be. But now, it felt out of place, like a promise whispered into the wrong moment. I closed the box, held it tight, and for the first time that night, I let myself ask the question I had been avoiding. What if I'm not the one she was ever waiting for? The longer I stood there, the heavier everything felt. Not just the ring, the silence, the knowing, the quiet unraveling of something I thought was solid. Behind me, laughter spilled through the glass doors. A cheer went up. Maybe someone made a toast. Maybe someone kissed. Maybe Emily threw her head back and laughed the way she does when she forgets I'm watching. I didn't turn around to check. Instead, I stood in the dim light, staring out into the vines and shadows, letting the cool air wrap around me like a coat I hadn't asked for. I thought about our first kiss, the first time she fell asleep on my chest, the playlist we made together on that rainy drive up the coast. They played like old film reels in my mind, not painful yet, just distant, like they belonged to someone else. It's a strange thing, realizing in real time that something is ending. Stranger still, when you know you can't stop it. I heard footsteps behind me. For a second I thought, maybe it was her. Maybe she noticed I was gone. Maybe she followed. But it wasn't Emily. It was Sophie. She stood just a few feet away, hands wrapped around a half-full glass of wine, eyes scanning my face like she already knew. We hadn't spoken much before. She was Emily's younger sister, quiet, observant, always in the background. The kind of person who didn't waste words. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just looked past me, through the glass doors, and said, "She's still dancing with him, isn't she?" I nodded. No defense. No explanation. Just truth between strangers. Sophie let out a quiet sigh. "She always does this," she said, almost like it hurt to say it out loud, even when she swears she's moved on. Her voice wasn't bitter. It was tired. The kind of tired that comes from watching someone you love repeat the same mistake over and over. And suddenly, I didn't feel so alone out there. Sophie didn't fill the silence. She stood next to me, looking out over the vineyard like it had something to say. The party behind us kept humming, like it hadn't noticed anything had changed, but everything had. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the ring box, opened it, let her see it. Her eyes widened. She didn't say anything for a moment, just stared at it, the small curve of gold catching the last bit of sunset. "You were going to propose?" she asked softly. "Yeah," I said. "Not anymore." She looked at me, not with pity, not with shock, just quiet understanding, like someone who had seen this story before and already knew how it ended. Then, without really thinking, I placed the box in her hand. "Give it back to your parents. Or toss it. I don't care anymore." Her fingers didn't close around it right away. She looked at me, confused. "Why me?" "Because," I said, "you're the only one here who's been honest with me." For a second, Sophie just stood there, the box resting in her open palm like it carried more than a ring. Maybe it did. It carried everything I had hoped for, everything I was ready to give, and now it meant nothing. I turned back toward the glass doors. Inside, people were clapping. The song had changed, but the scene hadn't. Emily was still out there, spinning, laughing, lost in something I wasn't a part of. She hadn't looked for me, hadn't noticed I was gone. I took one last breath of the vineyard air, slow and steady. Then I said it, not to Sophie, not to Emily, just to the moment itself. "I'm done." No anger, no bitterness, just truth. Because I realized then, I didn't want to fight for someone who could forget me that easily. I didn't want to kneel for someone who danced with ghosts. I walked back toward the house, past the candles, the chatter, the clinking glasses, past the life I almost stepped into. And I didn't look back. The warmth hit me first, the shift from cold air into the heat of the house, thick with bodies and noise and celebration. But it didn't feel like celebration anymore. It felt staged, manufactured joy. Laughter turned up too loud, people spinning in circles just to avoid standing still. I moved through the crowd without stopping. No one noticed me. I was the man who had once planned to ask the biggest question of his life here. and now I was just another shadow slipping past champagne flutes and paper lanterns. I saw her, Emily, still dancing, still smiling. Derek had one hand on her waist, the other holding hers like it belonged there. Her head tilted back in laughter, eyes closed, completely gone. She didn't see me, didn't feel me walk past, didn't sense what she'd lost, and I realized something that felt both cruel and freeing. She didn't even know she'd been chosen. I kept walking, through the laughter, the polished shoes, the polished lives, the perfect backdrop for something that was never going to be mine. Part of me wanted her to see me, just once, to glance over her shoulder, catch my eye, realize what she was losing. But she didn't. She never looked. And maybe that was the answer I'd been too afraid to ask for. I passed the table where we'd set our coats. Her shawl was still folded next to mine, the one I brought just in case she got cold. She always forgot to bring one. I picked it up, paused, then left it. Someone else would offer their jacket now. I stepped outside again, not rushed, not running, just done. The door clicked shut behind me, and with that everything we had ended. Not with shouting, not with a goodbye, just silence. The kind that comes when you finally stop lying to yourself. The night air met me like an old friend, cold, honest, unapologetic. I stood there for a moment on the gravel path, listening to nothing. Just the wind brushing through vines, a distant dog barking down the hill, a party still carrying on behind closed doors. And I felt something strange, not relief, not yet, but space. Like for the first time in months, maybe longer, I had room to breathe, without holding my chest in fear that everything might collapse if I exhaled too hard. My car was parked down the road. I started walking, slowly. No destination, really, just forward. Each step felt like I was shedding something. Expectation, disappointment, the version of myself that waited too long for someone to choose me back. No one ran after me. No one called my name. And honestly, I was grateful for that. Because this wasn't a moment that needed fixing. It was a moment that needed to be walked through, alone. There was no dramatic ending, no final confrontation, no last words echoing in my head, just steps, gravel crunching under my shoes, the cool bite of autumn air settling into my collar, and stillness. It was the kind of quiet you don't realize you've missed until you're standing in it. Not empty, not lonely, just clean. For a while I walked without thinking. Then slowly the thoughts returned, not as questions, but as answers I already knew. She didn't love me the way I loved her. Maybe she tried. Maybe she meant to. But in the end, love that needs to be chased isn't really love at all. I stopped beneath an old oak tree lining the drive, looked back once, not at her, not at the house, just at the life I almost stepped into. Then I turned away and kept walking, not because I had somewhere to be, but because I finally understood. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is leave with nothing, except your self-respect. I made it back to my car without checking my phone, didn't scroll, didn't call anyone, all. Just sat there, keys in my lap, staring at the steering wheel like it might offer answers. That's when my phone buzzed. One message. It wasn't from Emily. It was from Sophie. Just 4 words. You did the right thing. I read it twice. There was no period, no emoji, no need for anything extra. It was like she understood, not just what happened, but how heavy it all was. I didn't reply, not because I didn't appreciate it, but because I couldn't. My chest was still too tight, my hands not steady enough to type, my heart still somewhere on that balcony, trying to let go of something it once clung to with both hands. But I stared at that message for a long time, and for the first time that night, I didn't feel like the fool. I felt like the one who finally chose himself. I started the engine. The headlights lit up the gravel road ahead. Familiar, empty, quiet, just like I needed it to be. I didn't check the rearview mirror. There was nothing behind me I wanted to see. No need to watch the house disappear. No temptation to wait for a message that wouldn't come. I just drove, hands steady on the wheel. Window cracked slightly. The air was sharp but honest. The kind of cold that doesn't lie to you. A part of me thought I'd feel wrecked. Like I'd fall apart once I was alone. Like grief would come crashing in the moment I pulled away. But it didn't. It was softer than that. Not an explosion. Just a quiet ache. the kind you carry like weight in your chest, not a wound. There were no tears, no screaming, just a man driving home with a ring in the rear pocket of his jacket, and no one waiting at the end of the road. The next morning came without permission, no storm, no revelation, just sunlight leaking through the blinds of my apartment like it had any right to be there. The same kitchen, the same shoes by the door, but everything felt different. I sat at the table with black coffee and the kind of silence that presses on your chest. Not because you're sad, because you're adjusting to the weight of what isn't there. She didn't call, didn't text, and honestly, I didn't expect her to. I kept thinking about the night before, the ring, the moment I walked away, not replaying it, just holding it. Like a stone in my palm I wasn't ready to put down yet. I didn't feel angry, I didn't feel proud. I just felt emptied, like I'd spent months building a house and suddenly remembered I was the only one living in it. I used to think heartbreak looked like rage, shouting in the rain, smashing plates, long messages that never get sent. But mine was quieter. Mine sat in the corner of my apartment, asking questions I hadn't dared to ask before. Like, why did I ignore the signs? Why did I settle for almost love? When did I start mistaking effort for intimacy? It wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about me. The way I let my needs shrink to fit her comfort. The way I called it patience when it was really fear. The way I waited, not for love to come, but for it to stay, even when it already hadn't. That morning I didn't cry. I didn't try to fix anything. I just sat there staring into a cup of coffee gone cold, realizing sometimes the person who breaks your heart is the one you gave it to too quietly. It didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic moment where I stood up and said, I'm moving on. No movie scene montage of gym workouts or deleting photos, just a shift, quiet, subtle. I stopped checking my phone. I stopped replaying the dance in my head. I stopped wondering if she ever thought about me after that night, and if she did, whether it even mattered anymore. Because the truth was, I had already given her enough patience, enough forgiveness, enough chances to show up, and she hadn't. So now, I was done showing up for someone who didn't know how to meet me halfway. That wasn't bitterness. It was self-respect, finally waking up in me after being asleep for far too long. I didn't hate her, but I no longer needed her to love me either. And there was a strange kind of peace in that. It's strange how much of yourself you forget in a relationship. Little things. What music you actually like. How you take your coffee when no one's watching. The way silence used to feel like peace, not punishment. That week, I started remembering, not because I tried to, just because there was finally room to. I went for long walks without my phone, listened to albums I hadn't touched in years, cleaned my apartment top to bottom like I was making space for someone new, even if that someone was just me. It wasn't about getting over her. It was about getting back to me. The version of myself that laughed more, trusted his gut, didn't live on the edge of someone else's moods. That man was still there. He was tired, bruised, a little quieter now, but he was mine. And slowly, I started coming home to him. There was a moment, a few days in, when I realized something had changed. I was sitting on my couch. No music, no TV, just quiet. And it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt earned. For weeks, maybe months, I'd been filling every silence with distraction, noise to drown out the doubt, podcasts, playlists, her voice in my head saying, I'm just tired, when really, she was already gone. But now the silence didn't accuse me. It didn't ask what I did wrong. It just sat there beside me, like an old friend I hadn't visited in a while. Steady, undemanding, honest. And in that stillness, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Not regret, not longing, but presence. I was here, not in the past, not in the what-ifs, just here. And for the first time since I bought that ring, I didn't feel like I had to apologize for existing alone. It started small. A text from Sophie, just a meme. Some dumb joke about bad coffee and worse dating advice. No heavy meaning behind it, no follow-up question. Just a moment of lightness dropped into my day. I smiled before I even realized it. Not because it meant anything, but because it didn't have to. She didn't ask how I was doing, didn't mention Emily, didn't tread around my feelings like they were broken glass. She just showed up, casually, quietly, in my inbox. And somehow, that mattered more than all the long texts and check-ins I'd ignored from other people. There was no pressure to explain, no performance, Just someone saying, "Hey, I thought of you," without needing a response. I didn't reply right away, but I left the message open on my screen, and every time I glanced at it, I felt a little less alone. A few days later, she messaged again. This time, it was a song. Old blues track. Something raw, simple, honest. The kind of music that doesn't ask you to dance. Just invites you to sit with whatever you're feeling. No caption, no explanation, just the link. I played it on my walk that evening. It hit different. Not because of her, not yet, but because it reminded me what truth sounds like when it doesn't try too hard. Later that night, I sent a message back. "Good choice. That one got to me." She replied minutes later, "I figured it might." That was it. No flirting, no subtext, just real. And maybe that's what made it feel important, not romantic, not complicated. Just two people, exchanging something honest in a world where most people hide behind noise. I didn't know what it was becoming, but for once I didn't feel the need to label it. We started talking more after that. Not every day, not for hours. Just enough to feel human again. Funny articles. Half-thought observations, songs that didn't try too hard, photos of her dog sleeping in weird positions. I'd send back pictures of my coffee, or my half-burnt dinner, or the sky outside my window when it turned that deep blue right before rain. It wasn't flirting, it was something better, unforced. There was no expectation, no trying to be impressive, no ache in the silence between replies. And somewhere in all of that, the banter, the space, the ease, I started to laugh again. Not loudly, not for show, just under my breath, quiet and real. Like my body remembered something my heart was just beginning to relearn. Joy doesn't have to arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it just shows up, soft, unannounced, and asks nothing from you but presence. It hit me one afternoon. I was walking out of a bookstore, coffee in hand, a new novel tucked under my arm, when I realized something that stopped me in my tracks. I hadn't thought about Emily all day. Not once. Not in the way I used to. Tracing old conversations in my head, trying to reframe the ending to make it hurt less. She just wasn't there. Not in the margins of my thoughts. Not in the music playing in the background. Not even in the empty passenger seat beside me. It was like my mind had finally cleared enough space for silence, and the silence didn't echo with her name anymore. I took a breath. It wasn't a moment of celebration. No fists in the air. No victorious soundtrack swelling in the background. Just peace. Quiet, unremarkable peace. And in that stillness, I realized something important. Letting go doesn't always feel like breaking. Sometimes, it just feels like remembering who you were before you forgot yourself. There's a moment in healing when you stop checking the door. You stop wondering if they'll call, if they'll come back, if you mattered as much as you hoped. I reached that moment quietly. One night, I cooked dinner for myself, nothing fancy. Just pasta, wine, a record playing low in the background. I didn't set 2 plates out of habit, didn't look at my phone between bites. I just sat there, in the center of my own evening. And for the first time in a long while, I felt full. Not just from the food, but from the absence of longing. I didn't need someone across the table to validate the moment. The peace didn't feel like something I borrowed. It felt like something I earned. It wasn't loneliness anymore. It was solitude. And solitude, I've learned, is what happens when your soul finally stops running and sits down beside you like a friend. No apology, no explanation, just, I'm still here. There was a time I thought healing would come with closure, that maybe one day she'd call, apologize, say she was sorry for the way it ended, for not seeing me, for dancing with a memory while I stood outside holding a future, but that call never came. And somewhere along the way, I stopped needing it. Not out of pride, not out of bitterness, but because I realized an apology won't unchoose me. It won't rewrite the way her eyes softened for someone else. It won't bring me back to who I was before I felt forgotten in a room full of music I helped plan. Some truths don't get a ribbon tied around them. They just are. And the real closure? It didn't come from her words. It came from mine, from the quiet decision to stop bleeding for someone who never noticed I was cut. That's the thing about letting go. You don't always need permission. You just need to stop holding out your hands to be caught. I never tried to replace her. That's not what this was. Sophie and I, we weren't a rebound, or a distraction, or some half-hearted attempt to patch over what broke. We were just present, simple messages, shared silence, a strange kind of comfort that didn't need defining. There was one afternoon, late fall, the kind where the sky turns gold at 4 and the air smells like wood smoke, when she asked if I wanted to meet for coffee. Nothing more than that. No pressure. No build-up. Just two people who'd quietly stayed in orbit, deciding to land in the same place for a little while. I said yes, and I didn't feel nervous. Didn't feel like I was betraying anything. Because by then, I understood something no one ever taught me. Moving on isn't about replacing what you lost. It's about realizing what never truly belonged, and finally making room for something that could. The coffee shop was quiet, not empty, just slow, like the world outside had hit pause for a moment. Sophie was already there when I walked in. No makeup, hair pulled back, a book half open in front of her. She looked up, smiled, not wide, not rehearsed, just warm, familiar. I sat down across from her, and for a second we didn't say anything, not out of awkwardness. But because silence wasn't something we were trying to escape anymore, she slid a second cup toward me, black coffee, no cream. I hadn't told her how I take it, but somehow she already knew. We talked, about nothing big, about books we hadn't finished, how the weather never commits in fall, the weird names people give dogs. But it was enough, not exciting, not life-changing. Just two people, showing up without pretending. And I remember thinking, this is how something good starts. Not loud, not certain, just honest. It wasn't love, not yet. What I felt with Sophie that day wasn't lightning or heat or some cinematic rush that makes you question everything. It was steadier than that, calmer, like standing on solid ground after months of trying to balance on shifting sand. I didn't check my phone once. Didn't wonder if Emily had seen me there. Didn't think about what this meant or where it was going. I just sat across from a woman who didn't need to fix me, because she wasn't trying to be the answer. And I wasn't trying to prove I was okay. There's something powerful in that, in not performing your healing for someone else. We left the cafe without making any plans, no promises, no timelines, just a shared glance before we parted, like we both understood. Whatever this was, it would move at the speed of trust, not urgency. And for the first time since it all ended, that felt like enough. That night, I sat alone on my balcony. Same view, same quiet, but everything felt different. I wasn't replaying conversations. I wasn't imagining what could have been said or done or undone. I was just here, feet up, whiskey in hand, the city humming low in the distance. A little older, a little worn, but still standing. I thought about all the moments I thought I needed saving, from the breakup, from the silence, from myself, but I didn't. I just needed space, to grieve, to forgive, to remember, to outgrow the version of me who thought love had to hurt to mean something. Sophie wasn't the rescue, she was the mirror. She showed up with no agenda and somehow reminded me of who I was before the heartbreak taught me to shrink. And that's what healing looks like sometimes. Not getting someone new, but getting yourself back, piece by quiet piece. For a long time I called it a mistake. The relationship, the love, the almost proposal, all of it. But lately, I've stopped doing that, because calling it a mistake implies I should have known better. And the truth is, I loved her the best way I knew how, with sincerity, with intention, with the kind of heart that shows up even when it's scared. And that's not a failure. That's a chapter. One that taught me how to listen to quiet hesitations, how to notice when my needs were being tucked into corners, how to tell the difference between being chosen and being convenient. If I could go back, I wouldn't change the effort I gave. I'd just stop offering it to someone who kept choosing almost, because now I know I deserve all the way, and I'm not afraid to wait for it. Sophie and I didn't become anything overnight. There were no grand declarations, no perfect moments where everything clicked into place, just slow mornings, text messages that didn't demand a response, walks that ended without a kiss, but with a kind of peace I hadn't known in years. One afternoon she asked if I wanted to help her repaint her kitchen. I said yes, not because I love painting, but because I liked the idea of being in her space without having to explain myself. We spilled paint on the floor, laughed too loud, ordered takeout we didn't finish. And when she leaned her head on my shoulder as the walls dried around us, I didn't flinch. I didn't overthink it. I didn't wonder if I was ready. I just breathed in that moment, fully, calmly, like a man who had finally stopped living in the past. It didn't feel like a new chapter. It felt like the first time I wasn't afraid to turn the page. People talk about forever like it's the goal, the finish line. But I don't think I believe in that anymore. Not the way I used to. Forever is made of moments. Little choices we make to stay, to listen, to show up again even when it's easier not to. Sophie didn't promise forever. Neither did I. What we had was simpler, more honest. Two people, walking beside each other, not needing to be saved, just seen. And maybe that's what love really looks like, when it grows out of something broken. Not fireworks, not declarations, just peace, just presence. And the quiet courage to be known, not for what you survived, but for who you became after. I didn't need it to be perfect. I just needed it to be real. And for the first time in a long time, it was. I never gave the speech, the one I memorized, the one I planned to say under string lights, holding her hand, waiting for the music to swell. I never dropped to one knee, never heard her say yes or no. And for a while that haunted me, not the rejection, but the silence, the lack of ending, the space where closure should have lived. But now, I see it differently. The speech was never wasted, because I still believe in what I wrote. I still believe in showing up fully, in choosing someone on the hard days. In love that's quiet, steady, earned. I just needed to learn something first, something I hope you hear in this story. You don't lose your value just because someone else couldn't see it. You don't become less just because someone chose less. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you'll ever do is walk away with your dignity intact, your heart still open, and your future, finally, your own. And if you've ever stood alone, ring in pocket, truth in hand, know this: you're not broken, you're becoming.